Last night I did a live stream on martial arts, but it was a different, question than I usually ask. It's more towards like talking about a martial arts myth, talking about Chinese martial arts, traditional Chinese martial arts. Um, asking whether it's useless, and I pretty much agreed that they were because, you know, I tried to deflate the myth that all Chinese martial arts stem from Shaolin, and that this division between its internal and external kung fu is a real thing. It's more just a division of a certain body of Chinese martial arts that is grappling towards those which are striking, based on like a very subjective collection of martial arts during the early 20th century, and that these martial arts don't stem from like thousands and thousands of years ago. None of that is true. And saying why they were useless, which was something that Bruce Lee advocated, which was that prearranged fighting forms don't teach you how to fight. So that was yesterday. Today I'm gonna get into something a little bit more spicy, which is, of course, dealing with politics. Those are the two of the most spicy topics, is either politics or religion, right? And the question is, what is the political center nowadays? Who are the centrists? Is centrist even a useful category in politics anymore? Knowing that what's considered the political center is always moving one direction or the other. And I think I'm going to argue that currently the classical liberals are the centrists. And when I'm talking about classical liberals, and I consider myself a classical liberal, I'm not talking about American liberalism. American liberalism is complicated. Classical liberalism is very simple because doesn't it it doesn't compromise its values for the sake of certain other things. So classical liberalism stems back to all the way back to like the European Enlightenment, and particularly that of the British empiricists, those like John Locke, John Stuart Mill, um, you know, the Scottish thinkers like Adam Smith and David Hume, people like George Berkeley, which some people might mispronounce as Berkeley, which is the name of the place in California. It's named after George Berkeley, but they pronounce his name wrongly, and it's called Berkeley, California, but it was pronounced Barkley. Or even those of people like Jean-Jacques Rousseau or Immanuel Kant, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine. You know, these guys had a premium on the virtues of democracy, political freedom, religious freedom, individual freedom, reason, and I guess capitalism. So those were sort of like the virtues of classical liberalism. And, up until the last 20 years, classical liberals were considered on the left. Now, to those, as the country has shifted leftwards in its political leanings, classical liberals might find themselves seen on the right. So if I'm seen on the right, I have no problems with that. But I think classical liberals are more centrist, if anything. And, I'd like to get you guys' opinion on that. But I just want to distinguish the fact that when I'm saying classical liberals, I'm not talking about American liberalism, which is confounded with progressivism. And I did used to consider myself a progressive up until last year. I was a progressive throughout my latter years of college and grad school, and while I was in the military, and up until about a year ago. And I just couldn't swing it anymore because it was a bunch of different reasons, but the two major reasons that I abandoned being a political progressive was one, they don't value freedom of speech, which is of the highest value for a classical liberal, freedom of speech and thought. Because obviously, if you stifle speech, you're going to stifle how people can think about things, because thought and language are intimately related. They both follow some of the same logical syntactic rules. Um, and, they're both, well, I don't want to get too much into linguistic issues with speech and how it ties into thought unless you guys ask me. But in any case, I just disagree with progressives who think that freedom of speech should be free unless that speech offends those of oppressed minorities or ethnic minorities or anyone who considers themselves a minority group nowadays, which is virtually everyone. So that's not how freedom of speech works. Freedom of speech works not not when you stifle it to stop from offending people, but when you uphold it when it does offend people. Like I was proud of my alma mater a long time ago when they allowed that preacher to come to the campus and you know do his little hateful speeches. Fred, whatever his name was, he and his family would go to different college campuses and other places, you know, doing their little spiel, which was pretty hateful and mean spirited, but they had the right to do so. And I was glad my campus allowed him to come to the campus to say whatever he had to say. I can't remember his name was Fred Phelps or Phelps. I can't remember the guy's name, but some of you might remember. Cheddar Bob 13 says freedom of speech, not feeling the speech. Exactly. So there's only one time that I'm against freedom of speech because it actually backfires, which is in the case of fascism, but we can get into that later. And the reason being is that the fascism actually feeds on that freedom of speech to keep it to get itself going. But we don't have to get into that caveat. But outside of that, I'm always for freedom of speech, even if it offends people, especially if it offends people, because that's when it's most in need of being practiced. So that was the first reason I couldn't consider myself progressive anymore. The second reason was they were embracing extreme views. So never mind the phone guys. Okay. But they were embracing some extreme views that like with the trans activists that some of the stuff they were saying was just crazy. Like, not only were they against freedom of speech if it offended like minority groups, but they were also saying that merely disagreeing with someone was physical violence. And I'm like, okay, that's crazy. Now you're literally equating someone disagreeing with someone else to physical violence. That is extreme. And you don't have to have any background in linguistics to realize that doesn't make sense. What's up, Doc? I'm I'm doing all right. Um, so it was that, and then again, the embrace of the trans activism was just weird. Like embracing, like allowing children to go on to gender reassignment and all this other stuff. It was like you can't have it both ways. Like you can't say that gender is just a social construct, but then you have to go through biomedical treatment to reassign gender. That doesn't make sense. Like that just again, you don't have to take logic classes to realize that goes against most people's logical intuitions. If something is a social construct, you don't need a biomedical procedure to reassign it. It literally doesn't make sense. Not to mention that they're allowing minors to do this. So they can allow minors to completely destroy their genitals at an age where they can't consent to anything else. They can't drink. They can't consent to conscription to the military. They can't consent to sex. Um, they can't enter any contractual agreements because they're minors, but yet they can undergo gender reassignment or take puberty blockers. This is outlandish, and the the medical biology doesn't doesn't hold with them on those issues. So, like I said, the fact that they were embracing some rather extreme views, that they were willing to toss aside freedom of speech if it offends minority groups, meant that I had to abandon the title political progressivism, even if I did agree with a lot of their other views. And it was a long time coming because it was something I had thought about 4 years ago. And then last year I was just like, you know what? I'm just not going to be in that world anymore because they're just, it doesn't make, it doesn't make sense. Hello World says I'm gay, but can I still watch a stream? Everybody can watch my stream. Hello World. I don't. I don't. I don't refrain. You know, I don't ask anyone not to watch. The only people, as long as people are respectful, that's cool. I just don't like trolls, and trolls come, trolls come from everywhere. So as long as a person is in troll, I don't care who watches. I do not. This is not just for any one particular group. This is for my streams are for everyone, so everyone can enjoy. You can disagree with me, you can agree with me. As long as we can all be respectful, that's all I ask. So, yeah. Pardon me while I grab some coffee. If you guys like, you can buy me a coffee at the Buy Me a Coffee app. The link is in my description on my channel. Or you can donate by contributing to my Cash App or my Venmo. But I do drink coffee every day. So if you want to contribute, you can help buy me a coffee. Hello World, I would never tell you you couldn't stay. I mean, I don't know what streams you've been to before, but I don't discriminate against anyone. The only like, as long as someone's not a troll, I don't care who they are. They can contribute to the chat. That's cool. You like your coffee black? I honestly usually don't prefer it black, but if I do, like cafe americano, which is like black coffee but it's iced, I'll drink it that way. But as long as it's iced, I'll drink it black. But I don't like black coffee if it's hot. Like it, especially in the summer, I can't do it because like when I'm in the Philippines, they'll wake up and drink hot coffee and it's like already 80 something degrees. And I'm like, hell no. Like, I'm not drinking some hot black coffee early in the morning. That's horrible. Like, my mother-in-law, she was, she got up and when I got up, she had made me some coffee and she was like, yeah, um, my daughter said you don't like hot coffee like your iced. I was like, yeah. So she made me some iced coffee. Um, Kindly Luda, what's up? The topic is what is the political centrist or moderate position nowadays? Is it classical liberalism or something else? And my argument is that classical liberalism now is the centrist position in American politics today. The reason being is that things have shifted so far left that classical liberals are now finding themselves being considered on the right, on the political right, but I would say that they are the centrists. Being a classical liberal now, I think they are the centrists, but some people consider them center right. It doesn't matter. The point is that back in the 60s, like the classical liberals were firmly on the left, but they've been pushed right because of the shift of the nation's political leanings within the last 10 plus years. Burton PLW says that's funny. My wife gives me shit. I don't drink hot coffee. Yeah, me neither, Burton. Like I will drink it if there's nothing else. If I have no choice, I'll drink hot coffee, but it's not my preference. Like I don't care whether it's cream or just black. As long as it's ice, it's cool with me. Your wife is probably one of those purists that you have those so-called coffee purists that it can only be black and hot coffee. Like let everyone enjoy the coffee they want to enjoy their coffee. Whether they like it hot, whether they like it iced, whether they like it with cream and sugar, whether they don't, it's all good. Like coffee's for everyone, or well, everyone who likes coffee, that is, because some people don't. Burton Powell has to be cold outside. Yeah, me same here. But here's the thing with me, Burton. Like I'll drink iced coffee even when it's like winter, like in the dead of winter. I'll eat ice, but maybe I'm just weird. I'll eat ice cream when it's cold too, because for me it's better because it doesn't melt. The only time I've really had like enjoyed like hot coffee was like I was outside in a blizzard. We used to have more blizzards here in Maryland than we do now. But when we used to have like back to back blizzards in Baltimore, I remember coming from work and I treated a friend a friend from work to some Starbucks. Like we both went to Starbucks and had some hot coffee, and it tasted so good. Like that was the first time I like really enjoyed hot coffee in a long time. Was out there in that blistering cold. But usually during the winter, I'll just drink iced coffee. To be honest, and it's fine to me. But again, I'm probably weird. I think iced coffee for adults is like hot chocolate to children. Honestly, like iced coffee is just like a this is a I don't know, it's just a little a pleasurable drink experience. um, but yeah, guys. So what do you guys think? Do you think classical liberals are the centrists nowadays? And remember, when I'm talking about classical liberals, I'm not talking about American liberalism. I know a lot of people are going to get that confused. Classical liberals are more of the European uh, uh, thought, and in Europe, as things have shifted to the left, you can definitely know that classical liberals are considered on the right in continental Europe. But again, classical liberals several decades ago used to be on the left. Europe is way more leftist than America is. So classical liberals would be considered conservatives in Europe. And here, I would say it's starting to be the same thing. Classical liberals are being considered conservatives here, but we're not we're not conservatives per se, but I can say that we're center right. But arguably, I think classical liberals today are the centrists because it's gotten to the point that we find ourselves aligned with conservatives and defending things that used to be firmly on the left, like freedom of speech and, you know, other values that were like left leaning values. It's crazy. And Nika says, I love iced coffee. Burton says, haha, all right, where I live, my winters can get negative 65. We not eating ice cream outside. Well, I don't actually eat it outside. I'm just saying, like, when it's winter, I'll still eat ice cream. But yeah, I usually don't have it outside, per se. You know what I mean? Just in the house, right? Like, I'm not going to go walk around with, like, a popsicle or, or like, some um, Cold Stone Creamery. I don't know if you guys have Cold Stone Creamery where you live, Burton. Burton says, "What is your opinion about Biden's administration trying to run him out?" Um, I don't. Is it his? I don't think it's. I don't think it's his administration. I think it's the DNC trying to run him out. The DNC is now embarrassed because they've been caught in a lie that people have been talking about for the last 4 years, which is that the man has suffered a cognitive decline and is not in a position to lead the country. Most, a lot of folks, and this is where we get into the whole issue of what are political moderates and centrists nowadays. But the majority of people in America are not far left and not far right. Most of us fall somewhere within that nebulous middle, the moderates. And most of us who aren't like strongly tethered to the left or the right could see that the man was not the same person he was 11 years ago. Like, the fact that it was put on display in that debate a week ago kind of um it was the emperor's new clothes moment, right? The emperor is naked. We realized everyone got to see the emperor is actually naked. um so now there's people in the DNC looking to push him out for a stronger candidate. Here's the thing, it's a lose-lose situation for them at this point. This is my opinion. I could be wrong, Burton, but my from my perspective, it's a lose-lose situation. When people, when the Democratic base was telling them 2 years ago that they need to run another candidate for the 2024 election, the DNC ignored them. When they said people like, I don't like Gavin Newsom, by the way, but when people offered people like Gavin Newsom and other folks, they was like, nah, we're sticking with the sitting president. And people was like, well, he's looking like he's not mentally fit enough to go another 4 years. DNC tried to gaslight people, right? Um, and it felt like, I said, the emperor's new clothes came to light. I I know that reference might might lose some of my younger viewers, but you can look it up. There's a old story that most of us grew up knowing, and a funny one too. But yeah, um, where they're at now, like they're basically about to, you know, christen him the front runner for the Democratic nominee, right? He hasn't been formally done so yet. So, arguably, at the DNC inauguration, they could step in and say, we're going to actually nominate this other person to be our front runner for the presidential election. It's not going to work. Look, it like I said, it's a lose-lose situation. If they run him, if they keep him as the front runner for the election, he's going to lose to Trump, and people are going to say, well, we should have ran a stronger candidate. Yes, they should have, but they should have done that at least a year or two ago and announced that Biden would be stepping down at the end of his term. That would have been how they should have did it. But not wait until it's too late now. It makes them look weak. So even if they do nominate someone else, first you're going to piss off a lot of the Biden supporters in the base, saying, oh no, we don't support this. You can't just like neglect the sitting president. Um, then you'll have others like, well, it's too late. Like, no one's going to be able to beat the momentum that Trump has already built up. So whether they run, whether Biden steps down and they allow someone else to run in place of him, or the DNC just pushes him out, it's a lose-lose situation. Like, whether they keep him as the front runner or they push him out, it's a lose-lose situation at this point. You know what I'm saying? So that's my opinion on it. What's up, Eric? Save that money, says President Harris wouldn't be so bad. I disagree. No one likes. Well, here's the thing. I don't think she would be a bad president, but she's extremely unlikable by just about everyone. The only people who really like her are maybe like some black Democratic women, and they don't have a strong enough voting bloc to put her in office. decisively lose. She would decisively lose. There are some stronger candidates. Um, Andrew Yang, he had a strong populist following back in 2020. Andrew Yang, that would be a good one. Bring back or let RFK run as the Democratic contender instead of as an independent. You still got RFK Jr. out there. You still have Dr. Cornel West out there, right? There's this woman running as a Democrat who doesn't have a chance in hell, but she's like a flaky sort of person, so no, we can forget about her. And then there's the lady running for the Green Party, Dr. Jill, whatever her name is. She's a nut. No, not her either. But look, they could, if they wanted to, they could have backed RFK Jr., Andrew Yang. That that would rival that would that would work. Andrew Yang, that could have worked. But again, anyone they bring, even Harris, let's argue for the sake of argument. Let's say that Kamala Harris is actually likable, which we all know she isn't. She's very unlikable by just about everyone, and most black men. I'm gonna say most black men would not vote for her. She's only black when it's convenient, and she's not done anything for the advocacy of black Americans since she's been in office as VP. And her whole history as a state's attorney in California was locking up black people for stupid stuff like truancy and smoking weed and dumb shit like that. So anyway, aside from that, let's just say that she's very, very likable. She's extremely likable. Like she's like Michelle Obama likable, right? It's too late. If that was the case, they should have said, again, that should have been a year or 2 years ago. They should have said, well, Biden is going to step down as a one-term president because he's up there in years and it's just hard for him to mentally keep up. That would have been respectable, and they would have been like, we're going to push Kamala Harris as our front runner. That would have been good. But again, that would have been assuming that she was extremely likable, but she is extremely unlikable. Like her polls are, she current polls actually push her ahead of Biden and like favorability, but her polls overall are too low that she could beat Trump, even in the best of situations. So I don't. Whereas her maybe her presidency wouldn't be bad, but she could never get elected. Like she doesn't have enough favorability to get elected. If that makes sense. Burton says, "Look what he did with prison reform." I think you're referring to Trump, right? I'm not sure which candidate you're referring to. Landelau says, "No normal job would hire someone so old, but in government it's normal on both ends. There are so many intelligent young people who understand the modern ways better." Well, that's a double-edged sword, Landelau, because on one hand, we shouldn't we shouldn't support ageism because chronological age and mental age aren't the same, right? Obviously, Biden's mental age has caught up with his chronological age, but there are people who are way more mentally fit than him at his age and older. Like I said, look at when I brought up Thomas Thomas Sowell. The man's 93 years old. He still does, he still gives talks, and I think he's still part of the Heritage Foundation. The man just wrote a book 3 years ago at the age of 90. When I say he wrote a book, he wrote the book. It wasn't like most of these politicians who leave office and then they have a ghostwriter write a book for them about their career, their political careers. No, he wrote the book. You know, he's mentally acute enough. So we talked about this in a previous live stream. I don't think if they want to give age cutoffs for presidential and maybe senatorial office, I wouldn't have a problem with that. However, it's not really the chronological age, it's people's mental fitness. Like maybe at a certain point, Just like so, like with like with driver's licenses, at a certain point you have to take a test to show that you're still able to drive without needing special provisions, like needing corrective lenses, or like they might put restrictions like a person can't drive um, in night at nighttime because of their vision impediments, or stuff like that. So maybe there could be some sort of restrictions on people based, if not on age, based on their mental acuity in older years, because there's no reason that America should have the oldest politicians in the world, whereas most politicians in other parts of the world are like in their 40s and 50s, and we have politicians in their 70s and 80s. That's ridiculous. Like, Langdell says Trump should be in jail. What happened to the trial? No, he shouldn't. He's a former president. What former president do you know has landed themselves in prison? And how do you put someone in prison when they have uh, access to Secret Service for life? So are you going to have Secret Service, a rotating Secret Service force in prison with them? It's not going to happen. And maybe you've not caught up on the news, but the Supreme Court says that the president has partial immunity to most things. With presumptive, we're talking about presumptive immunity and other things. Like, it's not absolute. The president doesn't have absolute immunity, of course, but generally, when in office, it's almost like absolute immunity. And I agree with that, because if you could come up, if if a president wasn't immune to most crimes, then it would be used as a way for each party to go after each other's presidents, each, you know, every time the every time a political party switches the White House. And we don't need that. The American electorate, we don't need every president being put forth with crimes, because let's be clear, all presidents are criminals, all the way back down to the first one, George Washington. They've all committed crimes while in office. Uh, there's always been there's always been some sort of immunity for presidents within our the way government works. But now the Supreme Court has just made it explicit and have specified the types of immunity. They gave three types of immunity, of which two of them the president has, and the third one he doesn't, or is very limited. So I don't know which trial you're referring to, but again, there was no trial. He had a hearing on the Stormy Daniels thing. He was found guilty on all counts, but these were minor felonies in New York State. And being that he has no priors, he's not going to be sentenced to jail for these things. He'll at best get probation or something like that, or maybe home detention, something like that. But more than likely, not much is going to happen to him. If something did, it would cause a political. It would cause a political. I don't say. It would cause a serious political fight within the U.S. But in any case, that's not going to happen. All his other hearings for his other alleged crimes aren't going to happen until after the election, and most of those are going to be dropped because of the Supreme Court decision showing that the president has partial immunity. And whether people think that's right or wrong, I don't care, because this doesn't just affect Trump, it affects all presidents going forward. Because as things have become so divisive nowadays that every party wants to call the other party's president a criminal, which they all are, by the way, then it'll be used to just keep the whole system locked in a current tug of war of trying to jail the leader of the leader of the country. We don't need that. That's what happens in stupid places in like the African continent. We don't need a constant tug of war of trying to lock up our political leaders. So Burton says, I agree with you. Land that goes for all, not just president. We should have a term for all high officials in this country. Yeah. Like I said, some countries like the Philippines, again, I keep referencing the Philippines because I've lived there and probably will be living there again pretty soon. But the presidents there are one-term presidents, but the term is for 6 years instead of 4 years. And I think that means they can get more done because they're not worried about their whole first term being about setting up their reelection. So, same. I think this. I'm not sure about how the senators do it. No, I think senators can run for life over there too, just like here. So, um, yes, huh? Sorry, guys. Anyway, Craig on the move says Trump is going to win after Biden's poor performance in the debate. Yeah, looks like it. uh, Eric says, "What about Andre Dickens? Who's that? I don't even know who that is, Eric. I'm sorry." Uh, Landlow says, "How can someone who is in prison be president? This should never happen. They should all be excluded from politics." This is why some of you need to. This is why they shouldn't have taken this. Well, some I know in some school curriculums they don't have like very strong history classes anymore. Like as we used to, we had to take world history, U.S. history. You had to take a civics exam. I don't think most places have a civics exam anymore that you had to pass to finish high school. This is why they still need to teach civics in high school. It, being a felon does not prevent you from running for office. There was literally a guy, I believe Eugene Debs, who ran from office from prison. He didn't win, but the fact was he could still run for office from prison. Laura Wager says, do you think Michelle Obama will run? No, I don't think so. They are trying to push her to run, but she said many years ago that she would not run for office. She's not saying that she wouldn't want to be a politician, but she's saying that she wouldn't want to campaign as a politician. And I don't blame her. I would not want to. I would not want to run a political campaign. It's very exhausting. It's it's very compromising at times. I don't think she would want to do it just because I don't think she would want to run for office as opposed to being like someone who would be appointed to someone's presidential cabinet. I could see her getting a cabinet position, but I don't think she would run for office, Laura. At least I don't think so. She could change her mind. Like there are insiders within the DNC saying that she should run, but I don't think she has any interest in running, honestly, and I wouldn't blame her. And I don't even like Michelle, but again, I wouldn't blame her for not wanting to run because I wouldn't want to run for office either. Like I said, it's a very intensive, exhausting experience, and it can be very morally compromising. So, Burton says, I don't think she can because of her affiliations. I don't know what her affiliations are. And Kush Dev says, for the record, what's the time at your end? I don't know what you're referring to. Like I'm on Eastern Standard Time, so. CC Motion said, "How are you, man?" I'm good. Motion, what's up? Miss Needle's back. She says history class is actually so important, but you can't cover everything, unfortunately. Yeah, so you got to do trade-offs. But like I was saying, Miss Needle, so if I remember correctly, you're not in the United States. What I was saying was in earlier generations, we had to take a civics exam. Like you had to pass a civics exam in most American states. as part of your prerequisites for finishing high school. And they've removed that in most places nowadays, which shows that a lot of people are more, which makes a lot of people more illiterate about government and politics because they're not required to take that civics exam. And I think the civics exam would be kind of similar to what people would take when they come here and they want to receive their citizenship. They have to take a civics exam. I think it's something similar to that. Landau says, I understand what you mean. You say it's a difficult balance. Still, it rubs the wrong way when they have a free pass. No, no, no. That's fair. I understand that. That is fair. John Doe says he can't get no sleep. You talking about Biden? Dilfer says, when I went to high school, politics was an extracurricular class and not mandatory, which is a shame. See, that's exactly what I'm saying about Dilfer. Like, a lot of history classes aren't mandatory. So I blame some of this on George Bush Jr. So when he came into office, he had the good intent of trying to increase the standards in like things like math, science, and English by having these standardized tests. Standardized tests wasn't the problem. The problem was a lot of these inferior public schools decided they were going to change their curriculums just to teach to the test instead of ensuring that they have a good curriculum that allows people to perform well on these tests. And in doing so, they cut off a lot of stuff that they thought was not germane to pass doing these, getting passing scores on these tests for most of their students. Because if a lot of these students underperformed on these standardized tests, then these schools would not receive adequate funding. Okay. And so a lot of stuff that used to be, part of the school curriculum, like music, history, art, gym, health, was pushed out unless you went to a very like a upper income neighborhood school, public school, or you went to a private school, or you went to a charter school. Yeah, so a lot of places don't have history as a required courses anymore, and that's a shame. History should be a required part of the curriculum. Like I said, we were required to pass a civics exam. You had to pass a functional civics exam, a functional mathematics exam, and a functional English exam as your prerequisites. Yes. All right. So, in any case, the fact that history now is considered extracurricular is crazy. Sorry, I just lost connection. And Kush says it's 1:37 a.m. here, but I'm hearing you for your insights. Thanks. Burton says there's a lot of history being taken off the table. Yeah, like I said, ninth grade was more like ninth grade was like mostly like your intro history, American history, and all that sort of stuff. It was like a overlook of history, like current events and ninth grade was setting you up to do the civics exam in 10th grade, at least here in Maryland. And then 10th grade, we took world history. And actually, I was in an advanced world history class, so I actually worked out a deal with the teacher at the time that I could ask questions on world history that became bonus questions on the exam. So most people liked it. They was like, they tried to get the answers out of me, but I was like, nah, I can't do that. But like, I was, giving them question, like I would like, just throw random questions on the chalkboard, and if people got it right on the exam, they got bonus points on their exam. So people was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'm a nerd, so I'm a nerd, guys. But yeah, I used to actually give bonus questions for the exams for my world history class. Um, then afterwards, 11th grade was American history. By 12th grade, there was no longer any history, but I still took a history class anyway. At least for a semester, I took Black American history, just as as an extracurricular or an elective, right? It wasn't required, but I was like, I loved history, so I just wanted to take it. Ended up being able to take a field trip to uh, the Smithsonian, I think, African Art Museum or whatever. Um, so that was cool. But yeah, I, it boggles the mind that U.S. history and world history and civics aren't required anymore. Miss Neal says I keep learning something new things. I mean, I didn't learn much in history either. It was so superficial and missed a lot of info to connect the dots. Mm. Dilford says if Biden were to drop out of the race, who do you think would be a good candidate to replace him as the Democratic nominee? There are talks of Gavin Newsom. So you weren't in the chat earlier, Gavin, but I was saying it's too little, too late. Like even if they replace him, it would be a lose-lose situation. If you keep him running, he's obviously going to lose because his favorability is shot. He's lost a lot of the people on the far left because of his stance on Israel and his funding of all these proxy wars, um, and the fact that he never kept with his campaign promises. The you know the you know the student loan stuff, the stuff he promised black people, the that Build Back Better program or whatever. All those, he didn't stick to any of his campaign promises really. And like I said, his stance on Israel, which I do agree with, by the way, and like I said, his funding of all these proxy wars, giving billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, has lost him support on the far left and the progressives. And his so-called some of his one of his largest voting blocks, black people, particularly black women, are starting to abandon him. But black men in masses have left. I'm one of them because I voted for him. Unfortunately, I voted for him in 2020. I regret that, but at least I can admit it and I can own up to it, right? He doesn't have like the black voter split. He doesn't have them as a strong voting block anymore. So he doesn't have his progressives. He doesn't have his his black electorate. Um, the others are kind of split. Um, so he's going to lose on that front. But let's say we replace him, then there's going to be the people who are strong Biden supporters that they lose if they replace him, because they'd be like, how are you going to replace a sitting president? Regardless of how you feel about his mental acuity, he's the sitting president, so he should be the default front runner. So they're going to lose those people if they replace him. Gavin Newsom, some people might like him. He comes off like I don't know, I don't like him. He comes off like a used car dealer to me. Very disingenuous. He, he even if you pick someone with high favorability ratings, it's too late. Like we're already at the we're just a few months away from the election. If they were going to replace him, it should have been last year, not now. So I don't think anyone they could replace him with would win against Trump at this point. It's too little, too late. They should have replaced him last year. He should have stepped down and said, "I'm just going to be a one-term president, and I'm going to do, as I originally said in my campaign, I'm just going to be this one-term president to establish normalcy again, and then I'm going to let Harris or whomever run afterwards." Right? But he changed that because he decided, oh well, I need to still be here to prevent Trump. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. It's like you're just being a narcissist now. Which, I mean, most presidential candidates have to have a healthy amount of narcissism to think they can be the leader of the free world, but that's besides the point. But my but to answer your question, I don't think anyone could replace him now and still win. I think if this was done a year ago, Gavin Newsom could have been a good contender. I also think Andrew Yang could have been a good contender. Miss Nita says, Dilford, I heard about the Newsom rumor too. Pepper Myers says, exactly, it is a shame. Hello all. What's up, Pepper? Landela says, I would love to have practical courses like tax or what you need if you have more things like that. So a lot of, I can't speak for high school now, but we did have a lot of those practical courses back in high school. The problem was most of us didn't take those courses because they weren't considered college preparatory courses. Like most of us who were planning on going to college after high school, we only took college prep courses. So things like taxes, home economics, stuff like that. We avoided taking those classes because we wanted our classes just we wanted our schedules loaded with college prep courses, and then with like maybe like honors or AP courses. So if it's like if for like most like I said for most of us if we weren't the shame is that those courses are very useful. The irony is that the people who weren't planning on going to college were the only ones who took them, even though they're very useful. But yeah, they had those courses when I was in high school because people always say, "Well, they should be teaching kids this and that." I'm like, no, the parents should be doing a lot of this themselves. They want the schools to basically parent their children. But like I said, a lot of those courses were available. Like when my parents were in high school, they got driver's ed for free. Like driver's ed was a course they took in high school. I don't know any schools nowadays that do that. But back then in the '60s and '70s, people were most people were expecting to go right into the workforce after high school, so they had a lot of those courses in high school that geared you towards being a functional adult. Whereas nowadays, adulthood is prolonged so that you could go on to college and uh, earn a degree or go on to trade school and learn a trade so that you can actually make a livable income, which most for the most part you really can't do now. Leave right outside of high school. Oh, the paneling, yeah, thanks, Oe. This is not my place, by the way, but yeah, it's kind of nice. Landela says, I'm German. We hold history classes in high regard, so all the horrible things don't repeat. If one doesn't talk about the past, the present will not understand. Exactly. Bingo. Laura says, the Democrats have taken for granted the black vote. Absolutely. Like, and this is the schism within the black community is that some people are being called sellouts for going to Trump or whomever. And it's like, no, they're not. It's like, how many times are you going, someone going to take you for granted and you're just going to be like, all right, well, you're going to take me for granted. I'm going to go to this other person and give them a chance. That's what's happening. They're not sellouts for that. They're being rational. The Democrats have taken the black vote for granted for like the last 40 years. Burton says I was driving at 14 and got my license from high school. Yeah, like I said, some schools used to have driver's ed. For me, in my era, we didn't, but back then Sears used to be the place that everyone go take driver's ed. So everyone be all excited, going to Sears and being, getting their driver's ed certificate so they could go get their license. Oh, TF Studio says, and start a business, only reason I'm still alive. January, which says, don't want to sound creepy, but you have an audiobook voice, really calming. I haven't heard audiobook voice, but I've actually heard people say my voice is calming. I don't know if that's from, when I used to take helping skills and stuff like that when I was in college, because one of my majors was psychology. But my wife has actually also said that as well, so I don't take that as creepy as all. She's she said I have a calming voice, so sometimes if she can't get to sleep, she'll just talk to me so I can help her um, get rest. So I take that as a compliment. I think Miss Nita says Landau, some parts are on the rise again, just like back then. So guys, I'm going to leave soon. This was going to be um, a short live stream about to cook, but yeah, I just wanted to get the pulse on that because, like I said, I don't know where this political center is now in America because everyone is digging into their political trenches. You have those on the far right, you have those on the far left, whereas people have shifted the the conversation politically to the left. And for those who weren't in my live stream last week, I had mentioned that if people don't believe that we have shifted to the left politically, and only people on the left don't think we've shifted to the left, because for people, the problem is with people on the far left, they never think we're left enough, which is why I abandoned being a progressive, because you can't. Progressives are these political peers, and like unless you agree with every single thing, you can't be considered progressive. So I'll say, fine, I'm just not going to consider myself a progressive anymore. But it's gotten to the point where if you don't agree with everything, then you're not a purist, and people on the left always think things are still not left enough. And I'm like, I'm going to a public library, guys, and there literally was a sign up at the information desk saying that here we don't use the following terms because they are offensive. And they said, don't use the following terms: ladies, gentlemen, ma'am, sir, um, guys, um, stuff like that. I'm like, really? When did ladies and gentlemen and ma'am and sir become offensive to use towards people? That to me is extreme. Or the fact that when you now apply for a job, they ask you what your pronouns are. So, um, Pepper says double click your screen to hit that like button. Thank you, Pepper. Please, guys, like if you enjoy this, give me a like, and if you like, you can subscribe. You can check out some of my other content. I do a lot of stuff on current events and pop culture, but I also do a lot of stuff on very nerdy things like philosophy and science and comic books and Star Wars and superheroes and sci-fi. I also do a lot of stuff pertaining to martial arts. I have some videos of me training in martial arts. I like to travel, so I have some videos up of me traveling, or of my wife, Mrs. Contrarian, traveling. Um, so, if that stuff interests you, subscribe, hit the notification so you know when I'm uploading a new video, and you can share the video to other people too. When will I be back? I'll probably be back later this evening. I think I'm gonna do another live stream. Usually I only do one a day, but sometimes I'll do two. But I'm only cutting it short because I haven't eaten yet, so I'm gonna do that. Yeah, yeah, UK did have elections. Miss Needle, they made a big thing of the guy from the Labour Party winning, prime minister. I forgot his name, but I saw that while I was in the gym a few days ago. Like that was a big thing. And France as well. They said that France's national party was a move to the far right. I don't know. Thank you, Barricus. Burton says, I now run a ranch that is close to 800,000 acres or so. I just hope that when my son is ready, he will want it. Family ranches are slowly disappearing. I didn't know that. That's good of you to at least give your son that option, Burton. Like, so here's a little family situation for me, and I'm gonna go. So my father spent the last couple years um, aggregating some of the property we have in Virginia. So we have family property in Virginia in this area. I don't know if most of you guys have probably never heard of this area. It's called Rockfish, Virginia. Very rural area in the mountains. And so it belonged to, all our aunts, uncles, my grand, my grandfather. Almost all of them have passed away except for one auntie. And one of the places, the major, one of the home around which most of the property centers, my father has been a caretaker of it for like the last 20 plus years. The rest of the family don't even go there, and a lot of them got mad because they were trying to sell that land to because most of his side of the family are poor. They live in Baltimore, and they want to use the land either to rent or sell. He blocked them from that, and they're mad at him. But then he also got aggregated the property that the other aunts and uncles own, and then bought up the last bit of, I think the last bit of it, from my grand aunt. And now there's like hundreds of acres, not as much as your 800,000 acres, Burton, but 100 or so acres, right? And now that he has all this property, he's like, well, I'm not going to give it to my kids. I'm like, what? Okay. I didn't care because I wasn't going to. I don't know if your son will feel this way when he gets older, but I just had no interest in maintaining that property anyway. But he was like, well, I'm not giving it to the kids. He said, when I pass away, I'm gonna hand it over to the state and let them make it into a park. I'm like, so you, to me that was messed up. Not again because of me not being able to have the land afterwards, or my sisters, but the fact that his cousins, who are the sons and daughters of these other aunts and uncles, possibly could have used the land themselves, whether to sell or do whatever. So he took their inheritance away from them, and he's not bequeathing that inheritance onto his own children, so it will just be lost. That doesn't make sense to me. But that's a family issue. But again, I commend you for at least having that ranch that you can bequeath to your son if he chooses to keep it. So uh, I'm gonna finish these comments, guys, and then I'm done. All right. In the way affiliate says the far left shift is so far left that a moderate like me has become a right wing extremist in their eyes. So I kind of think the same way in no way. Like I said, I'm a classical liberal, and formerly I used to be a progressive, but it became too extreme for me. So I've been actually pushed right because the political center has moved left. So so my argument for this topic was that I think that classical liberals now are the centrists, or at least we're center left. I mean, excuse me, we're center right. Classical liberals are either center right or just the centrists nowadays because everything has moved to the left. So whereas classical liberals used to be on the left, we're now somewhere towards the center, or maybe even on the right, and I'm fine with that. Uh, Pepper says, "Yeah, I know that's crazy. I can use as I chose." Wise Up says, check your live out later, going to a public. So that's cool. Thank you." Miss Neal says, yes, France might escalate on the streets. Lots of violence. For real, only land is gold these days. It always has been. Always has been. Miss Neal says, gotta be healthy to take care of it, though. Health is key for anything to be as independent as possible. Yeah, I constantly preach people need to be physically fit, but people don't want to do so. Physical fitness affects so many realms of your health and other things, other aspects of your life, but you can only preach it but so much. But anyway, guys, I'm gonna go. All right. Again, I'm going to attempt to be back later this evening. It's so hot that I haven't worked out yet, so I'm gonna work out, eat, and then I should be back. But it's gonna be a different topic when I come back, though. Thanks, Miss Needle. So unless you guys have any other comments, questions, or queries, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna give it a few seconds, but feel free after this is over to drop any questions or comments in the comment section. I always check that stuff. Or if you have stuff from yesterday, you can still drop that too, which was talking about Chinese martial arts and whether it's useless. Thanks, Burton. I always try this. This I would say this neighborhood is this was the neighborhood I used to live in when I was a teenager. It's actually pretty safe nowadays. I think because now most people are homeowners, and home ownership makes people act right, right? like like Chris Rock said. He said a mortgage will make you act right. Um, Usually people the, the the places where it's more, let's say, rambunctious is usually places where people aren't homeowners. They're renters. They're Section 8 people. So, in any case, guys, I'm going to go, but I appreciate the talk. And like I said, if you guys have any disagreements as far as what you think the political center is now, do you think it's classical liberals? Do you think it's moderate conservatives? Like I said, it's almost to the point now where you can't really distinguish a conservative liberal, excuse me, a classical liberal from a moderate conservative anymore because they overlap so much, or libertarians. Um, I forgot to mention libertarians, but they're in that mix too. So, if you guys think one of those are the centrists, go ahead and leave it in the comments. But I'm gonna go. Okay, I appreciate it.